Hello and welcome to the James Granstrom Podcast Super Soul Model Series, where I help you tune and tap into a natural state of well-being. In this week's episode, I have a fantastic guest, Matt Cooke. Matt is a manifestation coach, and Matt helps teach people how to use their mind in order to manifest their best life. I'm so excited to introduce this week's Super Soul Model, Matt Cooke. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you, James. It's great to be here. Really looking forward to it.
Great stuff. Matt, how do you become a manifestation coach? You've got such an interesting story. It's going to open up some people's minds here. But how did you first become a manifestation coach? How did you step into this new world? Because you have a story that's very colorful, very interesting, and I'm sure will light up many people's minds. So yeah, how did you become a manifestation coach, and what is that to potential new listeners on this show?
Sure. Yeah, great question. An important question, because if I'd have gone back 5 years ago when I was an estate agent here in the UK and tried to predict where I'd be in 5 years' time, I would have never have said a manifestation coach. Yeah. I didn't even know what the word manifestation was at the time, in all honesty. But my story starts in July 2017 when I lost my mum to cancer. And she was 51 at the time. And of course, life was taken away from her far too young. And at that time, I was, like I said, selling property. I was a manager in a firm of estate agents here in the UK. I was the youngest manager in that company. And I thought at the time it was just all about materialism and working hard, climbing the corporate ladder. And then my mum passed away. And one of the last things she said to me about a week or so before she passed in a hospice was, Matt, just make sure that you are happy, that you find time to spend quality time with my wife, Khorasan, travel the world, because when you're in my position, trust me, you'll realize how precious life is. And, she was a bit of a workaholic. She was cabin crew. She flew all around the world, but never really got to enjoy that. So she was always seeking like retirement with my dad to do that. And then bam, life's taken away. And sort of a year goes by and that final sort of conversations constantly swirling around in my head. To a point where a year later, I'm under quite a lot of stress and pressure from work. The housing market's flying, sort of 2018, and had a bit of a tight chest, struggling to breathe. I remember it really well. And my wife's grandmother said to me, if I paid for some reflexology, would you be up for going and doing it? And I didn't know what that meant, but I sort of went along with it.
I was going to ask you, did you know what reflexology is at the time?
That's all. I just knew it was to do with feet. That's all I knew, right?
Yeah.
And I was laying there and I didn't know the therapist apart from his name. He just knew mine. And he asked me, he said, so Matt, tell me who you are. And I said to him, well, I'm 26. I'm an estate agent. And he said, I didn't ask what you did for a living. I asked who you are. And that question blew my mind because I genuinely didn't know how to answer that. I think most of us think that our purpose in life is to work hard, get a mortgage, climb the corporate ladder. Of course, that's important, but I don't think many of us figure out actually who we are behind that shell. And so that was like the start of the spiritual awakening for me, to try and go on the pursuit to find that. But then something extraordinary happened to me in February 2019, about 4 or 5 months after that question. One particular evening, I'm lying up in bed with my wife. We're watching Netflix on the laptop, as you do. And I remember it well. It was like 10 o'clock. And I just said to my wife, I'm turning over. She carried on watching whatever she was watching. And as I turned over, I'm still fully awake. And my whole entire body starts to vibrate. I've never experienced anything like it before, to a point where I felt like I could have stopped it if I wanted to. But because I'd never experienced it before, I carried on with it. To a point where I could have literally hovered off the bed, being deadly serious. And then I heard high-pitched ringing in both my ears, really, really loud. And then it went completely quiet. And I heard my mum come through and say, hi, Matt, it's Mum. Can you hear me? And we had just a very small conversation before my wife nudges me and says, Matt, who are you talking to?
Were you talking out loud, or were you talking mentally, or, can you remember?
So, I can.
What was happening? Yeah.
Fully conscious. I could hear her clear as day, but sort of inside, if that makes sense. So my wife couldn't hear my mum. But I was talking out loud as you'd normally speak to someone. So like I'm speaking to you.
And your wife is like going, shut up, or who are you talking to?
Who are you talking to? Yeah. And, it's important to note at that time, I was a complete skeptic about the afterlife. I wanted to believe it. My mum and I used to watch like Most Haunted and Colin Fry when I was younger and stuff like that. But I genuinely, I didn't really believe that there was an afterlife, that the soul's eternal and we continue. Now, after that experience, I'm a curious person. I love to learn. I wanted to know how I did that and how I could do it again. So I spent the next 3 months trying to do it again. And I soon realized the more I try, the harder it's going to become, because that happened to me without me trying consciously. It just happened in divine time. There was just a match. And it led me down this path of actually understanding what happened. And I understood through so much research that, of course, everything's energy, scientifically proven, 99.9999% energy, even physical objects. We perceive it to be material, even the human body is not. It's just atoms, molecules, and empty space vibrating at different frequencies. So as soon as I worked out that everything's energy, I then tried to work out what had happened. And I worked out that me vibrating was me lifting somehow my vibration, my frequency. And my mum obviously had connected with me, just like tuning into a radio station. If you want to listen to Radio 1 here in the UK, you've got to tune into 97.9 FM. If you don't, you get crackling, you're out of alignment. And I was on a call very recently, another podcast actually, with a lady called Gemma, who's a psychic medium. She has a guide with her. And I was sharing this story and she said, sorry to interrupt you, Matt. She said, but do you know why we're called mediums? I said, no. She said, because we help people connect in the middle. And that to me was a huge realization, because the way I can describe it was literally like I'd raised my vibration, because we're very dense here on Earth. That's why we're sort of, three-dimensional. My mum's obviously a pure form of energy vibrating at a very high frequency, so you can't see it, right? And we just connected on that level. And that to me...
May I just sort of interject here for a second? So how were you feeling when you were in the bed, right? Because this is important, because when I introduced the show, as I've done for like, I don't know how many episodes I've done, like 125 episodes or something.
Yeah.
I always say, welcome to the show. Let me help you tune and tap into your natural state of well-being, because tuning in is tuning into your natural state of energy. And when you're naturally high, what happens is you can pick up the different frequencies of what you need to pick up on, what is right for you. And what's right for you might not be right for somebody else. But when you raise your frequency, raise yourself to a natural vibration, which is in harmony with life itself, you become one with life. And that's when what you need to hear, you will hear. And in that particular evening, that was the evening that your mum was able to connect with you, to perhaps give you a message to say, hi, Matt, I love you. And that's really, really important, because whilst it doesn't matter how you get there, it just matters that you find your natural frequency. And, some people try and do all sorts of things to try and, dare I say, coax themselves into a different frequency. But it's when it's done naturally is when you really get the signal and receive the signal clearly from what's sort of coming through. And it's always coming through. But the question is, are you able to receive it clearly? And then are you able to understand it? And obviously, the more you're in this frequency, the more you become used to it. And then you'll know when it's a clear inspirational voice, or it's not. And it all depends on how good it feels. So I guess my question is, how good did it feel when you were vibrating in the bed there? Sounds a bit funny. But I was just going to say that frequency, that natural frequency that you feel, just naturally feels like, it just feels good. It feels wholesome. It feels energizing.
It felt bliss. It felt amazing. And actually, you've just made me think of something there that, like I said to you, my spiritual awakening started a few months before that with the reflexologist.
Yeah.
And what I haven't said is, in between that time, I was going through the most amazing journey of trying to find my purpose and tap into the spiritual side. So I think I probably had unconsciously put in the work to lift my vibration before that actually happened.
Absolutely. Because otherwise you'd never be in that receptive state to even hear your mum come through. Now, a lot of people may be listening to the show going, well, how is this possible? And the fact of the matter is, we're all like radios and receivers, as Matt was saying earlier. And, the clearer your mind can be, the clearer your consciousness can be, the easier it is for you to receive a good idea or someone coming through. That's what the psychic mediums are all about. That's what good inventions are all about. Where do you think they all come from? They come from this infinite field of consciousness where they're just like, who's ready to receive the next great idea? And it was obvious that your mum was trying to share a message with you, which is beautiful. Yeah, carry on. Where were you? So you were having that preparation before this day, and then, you know,
And then it happened.
this whole journey here is very, very interesting for a lot of people because it makes you think, well, there is more going on than just meets the eye here.
Yeah. So that led me down this path of understanding energy, vibration, and frequency. And I suppose at the same time, I was also transitioning out of my corporate job because I finally established my purpose a few months after. And I was building an online business at the same time and getting out of real estate. And I made a decision. I said to myself, well, do I want to become a medium, or do I want to learn more about energy and what that means? And I naturally then again fell into The Secret and the law of attraction. That was like the first, I think, like most people, reading The Secret. It was actually a business coach of mine that sort of said, check it out. He sort of said a lot of his success was down to learning the law of attraction. For anyone who doesn't know what the law of attraction is, it's a principle, a law that your thoughts can create your reality. Like attracts like. But to me, I suppose I always wanted to understand how things actually work. If someone says to me, "Oh, the way you think will, create your personal reality outside," for me, it's always wanting to understand actually the scientific sort of understanding, the foundations of how that works.
Really tapping into that left brain to understand the engineering and mechanics behind how it all comes to be.
Yeah. And I think going through the experience with my mum and learning about energy, I really started to understand manifestation. And I then, for anyone who doesn't know, I stumbled into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Yeah. And he's a scientist. He broke his back in the 80s and healed himself through the power of his mind. And what I found so interesting about his work was the scientific mechanics behind manifestation. And what I loved about his work and events were how people would go to his events with chronic disease, terminal cancer, blind people, people in wheelchairs, people with MS, people who were, in a really bad situation financially, and manifest miracles or heal themselves. And for me, that resonated because, the one thing that my mum never tried or knew about, nor did I at the time, was the power of the mind. And in fact, speaking to my dad several times after, my mum wasn't the best with her choice of words. She had cancer in 2007, got past it, got the all clear. But she used to say things like cancer will come back, Yeah. And as much as she tried everything, all the relevant green smoothies and diets and everything, she didn't understand the power of the mind. And I felt like this was sort of my calling. And again, piecing it together with Joe's work and people curing themselves, that's what I really dived into. And since I'd say it's coming on for 3 years now properly, manifesting absolute miracles into my life by understanding actually how it works. So
and that's what you teach as well, isn't it, Matt? You've got one-to-one clients, and I'll explain a little bit of that later, but that's what Matt does. He helps people individually on a one-to-one basis how to actually tap into that and be able to make it work for yourself. But how each of us work is differently. You can provide the content, but simultaneously it's you who has to do the work. You're the one who has to show up. And Matt's a great ambassador of this because he's been very clear and mechanical. You need to use both hemispheres of your brain to understand this. You need to understand the engineering and the mechanics behind manifesting and drawing things into your life, but you also need to have that creative side, that flow state side on your right side, the creative side, the feminine aspect of yourself, which can be blended to use the two. So they both complement one another. They're both saying the same thing. One is very logical and analytical, and the other is very creative. And I think Matt goes about, if you ever watch any of his TikToks or in any of his content or read any of his blogs, he goes into great depth to try and satisfy both ways. If you're more analytical or you're more creative, that's a very important thing to point out. So Matt, I just wanted to ask you, so what's the greatest life lesson that you've had in the last few years? I know it's a game changer since your mum sort of came through on that night when you were on the bed, and you were like, wow, this is interesting. What's the greatest life lesson you've had since then?
Don't believe your thought. Don't believe everything you think.
Don't believe.
So yeah, people don't realize there's a difference between what you think, how you think, and consciousness. You are the master inside of there. You're the person that's sitting above the thoughts. You're not the thoughts. And you've got to realize that, because people think on average 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. And 90% of those thoughts are from the past. Now, that means then that 90% of the time you're thinking about the past and trying to predict the future based on the past. And if 95% of who we are is subconscious, a set of hardwired programs and beliefs from our past, and only 5% of us is conscious, for 95% of the time we're walking around unconsciously. And this is why whenever we start anything new or think of changing, it's scary, it's unknown, and it's unfamiliar. And we'll always talk ourselves out of it, or always talk about the negatives that might happen from it, because we're thinking in the past. And what I've come to learn over the last few years is to try and let life call the shots instead of my thoughts calling the shots. And every single time I've stepped into the unknown a little bit, even though it's been scary because I'm thinking in the past, it's always been magical on the other side. And I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't have listened to life instead of my thoughts. You know, I quit my corporate job. It was very, very scary. 6 months later, COVID happened and the company I worked for went bust. So I could have listened to myself and said, oh, stay there. It's comfortable. It's familiar. You're on a good salary, or don't be an entrepreneur. But if I hadn't have taken that step that was scary, I wouldn't be where I am now. So I think I would encourage everyone to do work about that.
I had a very similar thing there. So prior to COVID, my dad wasn't very well, and he asked me to come out. I've shared this on previous podcasts, but it just amazes me the timing and perfection that life can have if you listen. So I think it was a Friday night. My dad texted me or called me. He said, "I've gone back into the hospital. I've got lung infection. Could you come and look after your mum? She can't drive, obviously, and just if you can come to Spain, that would be great." But he wasn't very demanding about it. He goes, "If you can, that would be great, but no big deal if you can't." The next thing I do is I wake up and I wake up in the morning going, "Oh, I've got to do something here. I've got to make a real choice." And the next day I just jump on a flight, and I jump out on a flight to Spain. And then the day after I'd arrived, there was lockdown in Spain, which happened prior to the one in the UK. So I had arrived in Spain, sunny Spain, in March. I remember it was March the 16th. So, and then a week later or so, or 10 days later in the UK closed down. And there was no way I would have been able to travel anywhere for like months. I ended up being in Spain, taking care of my mum. And my dad fortunately came out of the hospital 2-3 days later, and he was so chuffed to be back. I picked him up out of the hospital, and I got to spend 5 months with my dad before he made his transition in October of 2020. And for that, I am so grateful, because of listening to that. Go now. I mean, drop everything and go. I had work lined up, I had everything worked up. But I just decided that was the most important thing, and that's what I needed to listen to. Hence, following that, I spent 5 months in Spain near sunny Marbella, and came back for a while. And then when I arrived the day my dad made his transition, and I felt blessed because I knew it was coming. I just felt that he was about, his soul was ready to move on. And so that made me think, just in the 5 months that we'd spent with one another, this is a real opportunity, even though I'd begun the podcast, to really help people find and tune into their well-being. Because my like your mother, who was saying she wasn't using her words, my father's actions weren't reflecting what a healthy person would do. And you get far more momentum and desire to try and make an impact in the lives of other people when you've been challenged, or you felt pain, particularly from the people that have been close to you. So that's made me want to go on a mission to try and help people tune into their natural state of well-being, learning about the mind, learning about how to take care of the body, and know how to take care of your soul simultaneously, because all three are holistic, and we are holistic human beings, and we need to cherish each part of that self. So what I wanted to ask you, Matt, is if you are manifesting perhaps abundance or health, how would you start somebody can take away right now in our conversation? What sort of mechanics, what sort of actions could they take to start bringing in perhaps abundance or health, to be able to draw that into their life if they're not sure where to begin? What would your recommendations be?
Okay, so I'm going to use abundance because I think everyone could do with some more abundance in the world at the moment.
Everyone loves abundance, and everyone should have more abundance. Absolutely.
Okay, so where people go wrong with manifestation is they say, when I become abundant, I'll feel better, right? Or I want abundance, I want more money. You've got to realize whenever you use words like want, you're in lack of what you truly desire. And we attract based on who we are. So you have to become an abundant person right now in order to attract more abundance. And that's what most people find very, very hard. To simplify, we have to realize that there is an invisible field all around us that we can't see with our five senses. And that field is carrying an infinite amount of energy, vibration, and frequency. And it responds accordingly to who we are. In fact, we're an extension of that field. We vibrate in and out of it 8 times every second. And the field gives us more of who we are. So if you ever hear people say, I always attract the same men into my life, for example, well, it's because they're unconsciously in the present moment thinking the same thoughts and feeling the same way. So of course the field gives them more of who they are. So if we want more abundance in our life, then we have to become abundant, and we have to do that by changing the way we think and how we feel. It's been proven that our thoughts send an electric charge out into this field. So we have to firstly think about being abundant. And we can do that by being grateful for the money that we do have, that maybe we don't practice gratitude for. So the money we do have that actually pays for the bills that we've currently got. So people think they'll only feel more abundant when more money comes in. But if you actually practice gratitude for the money you do have, you're changing your inner core vibration to abundance. And then if you practice gratitude, that's a feeling. Feelings are the magnetic charge in the field. So the way we think and the way we feel creates our state of being. And our state of being is our personality. So we have to become an abundant personality. And if we do that with this simple technique such as gratitude, the more we do it and we change our personality, we start to then see synchronicities in our outside world personality. Opportunities coming our way, checks in the post, for example. We've got to realize that we have to become it now. Same for love.
So what's the most magic? So can you share with us a story that's happened to you where you've practiced gratitude, and you've affected the field, and the field's brought you back something that's been absolutely remarkable? So it kind of gives someone a go, right, I could actually do what Matt's done there. So
yeah. There is so many. I'm just trying to think of a recent one, actually. So I play with different things, manifesting the perfect buy for my house is an example, but one that I've recently practiced, which is brilliant. So Deepak Chopra is a bit of a spiritual hero of mine. I just love him. I've read all his books.
Fantastic. Yeah, he's brilliant. Love his book.
And about a month ago, so I use meditation for anyone listening as a tool because it really grounds me and gets me present. You really want to become consciousness and awareness in the present moment. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if I could just connect with Deepak? So in meditation, I'm there and I get to the present moment and I send out the thought of just sort of connecting with him in some way. I just felt it, just thinking about it. And then I just felt gratitude for it and just like happiness and just love, just felt those emotions.
In a meditation, in a quiet mind state, yeah?
Yeah, in the present moment, yeah. And then I let go. Then I open my eyes and I carry on about my day. And the key is to, once you've stepped into it, you've got to let go, right? Because you've embodied it. The second you think about it, you stop the creation. And then it must have been a week later, I'm on my TikTok and I just see on the comments, and I get quite a few comments and likes, and I just kept seeing the top, Deepak Chopra, like, comment, followed. And I'm thinking, is that really him? So I go onto his TikTok, and he hasn't got a huge amount of followers, and I'm thinking maybe that's an impersonator. And I click on his Instagram handle that's connected to his TikTok, and it takes me to his main Instagram account with like 2.5 million followers.
Yeah.
And it is him. And that's just a story. That's just one that's happened very, very recently. But I just thought it was interesting because we don't, we can really play with this for anything that we desire, even small things like that, right? But I just thought it was a quite cool story because for so long I've loved his work, and and I've now got him as a friend, on social media.
That's amazing. What a great story. And
Yeah.
I think that when you're trying to attract some things in, sometimes you need to think, I need to go out and do that and get that, which was the old way of thinking, which is the three-dimensional way of thinking. But what Matt's referring to is that if you're able to go into a quiet state of meditation, set an intention for what you'd like to draw into your life, and just let it go. Very much like when you're trying to think of something and you've forgotten what it is and you're holding on tightly and you're like, do you know what? I'll remember that later. And then boom, when you've forgotten, in it comes. That's exactly the same of what Matt's saying of how you can attract these things in. But I think what Matt is referring to, which I think is really wonderful to be reminded of, is that you need to think and know what your intention is very clearly, and then think and feel, think and feel, think and feel. And that feeling of feeling that love, feeling that connection. I can't remember what the other emotion that you were using there.
Well, yeah, gratitude, happiness,
Gratitude
it could be
happiness.
anything. On
And then
that,
you didn't think twice about it. A week later, something popped up, didn't it?
So the way I want to give everyone an understanding of how this works is I want you to imagine you're at a restaurant and you're hungry, you're looking at the menu and you think about what you want. Oh yeah, I think I want steak tonight. You think it and you feel, oh God, that's going to be lovely. I can imagine the taste of that steak and everything, and I'll have a glass of red wine with that. And then the waiter comes and you put in the order, and then you let go. You've placed the order and you just relax into the evening, and that steak will come in divine time when the chef's had time to prepare it and cook it, and it will just come. You don't know exactly when it will come. It might come at 8:40 or 9:15. You don't know, but you've ordered it. The point is, it's the same with manifestation. You've got to get clear on what you want, and you've then got to place the order with the universe. You've got to think about how it's going to feel, and then you let go. Right. And the key is to wait for a match in three-dimensional reality, because we are manifesting, I don't want to go too deep here, but from what's called the quantum field, which is in the fifth dimension. We get beyond time. We've created time in three-dimensional reality. It's a man-made construct. So we've got to wait for there to be a match, and it will only manifest when it's meant to, in divine time. Like Deepak, a week later, obviously somehow stumbled across me.
There's always a buffer of time between your intention and what you want to desire and then it turning up, because if you just suddenly wanted something today, sometimes things that you can accept can come in very, very quickly. I've had instant manifestations many times in my life. But usually when it's something that's going to be of great value and makes you chuckle a little bit, makes you feel proud, it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be playful. And I actually believe that understanding this should be our basic knowledge. I'd like all the kids these days to just get this. I'd like every human being to just understand this as a basic principle, that manifestation is just a very simple, easy, understandable construct about how we use our minds to draw in to our lives what we want. But there's also a bigger thing behind manifestation, which is what I like to call divine will, which is how would you have me help you? And that's important. How does that fit in with the mechanics of manifestation for you, Matt, and perhaps sharing that with other people?
In terms of, just say that part again.
So yeah, the divine will, so in the quantum field, you talk about the field of which is 5-dimensional, and we're in a 3-dimensional reality. When you want to manifest something and it's ready to come to you, it comes to you. It's already, once you've asked, it's there, and then it has to wait for you to catch up. Your frequency has to elevate so it becomes a match. And what I've noticed in spirituality and speaking to more people and reading and doing my own research is I'm here to try and help the greater all that is, life itself. So I asked the question, how can I help you? Which started me doing this podcast. So I was asking the universe, how can I help you? And I got knocked on the head on the pool. And it was like, okay, you better do this podcast now, because I've told you so many times, yet you haven't been listening and you haven't applied. And it's a bit like perhaps with you, you were asking that question in the few months in between listening to your mum. How can I help? What can I do? How can I be of service? And then in comes I think it's
Makes
time for you
sense.
to perhaps look into being manifestation and teaching people the art and quantum mechanics of being able to manifest, which is unusual because not many people have experience speaking to their beloved mum who's on the other side or who's transitioned into a different frequency.
Makes sense. Yes. Thanks for sort of going over that again. So I think, in my opinion, people should, like you said there, put in the work to try and establish who they are, their higher self, their contract, their purpose in life. You know, there's some pretty simple techniques I would recommend everyone just looking at Ikigai. It's a Japanese meaning for reason for being.
Yeah.
Try and figure out who you are, because I help my clients manifest from soul's purpose rather than ego. There's nothing wrong with material things, right? But I always find that, you know, when we manifest from that higher source, that higher purpose, you know, and if we really focus on serving and helping others, you know, money will just have to hunt you down behind. You know, money's a byproduct of the value we give, right? So like you're doing the podcast, this is why I'm here now, you know, sharing as well, because, you know, my purpose in life is to help and support others in the pursuit to secure their best life. So I just find that if I now I've established my purpose by putting in the groundwork, I always try and manifest from purpose as well, you know, and just always think to myself, how can I help other people? And every time I seem to help other people, opportunities come my way.
More green lights. I was just going to ask, if someone isn't sure of their purpose, Matt, how would they go about trying to discover what that may be?
Sure. So the easiest way you can try and figure it out is ask yourself these 4 questions. Firstly, what do you love to do? What's your passions? So that can be the sort of things that you do over and over again without ever getting bored, the sort of things that you're drawn back to, just things that you love. The key is to not overthink this, right? The second question is to think about what you're good at. What are your skills and talents? What do other people come to you for help with? Is there anything that you know you're good at? Could be listening, for example, or making things seem easy. Just think about the skills that you're good at. Then have a think about what you could get paid for, either what you're doing now for a living, or what you'd like to be doing for a living, or what you really would like to be doing for a living, but you don't even know how to. Just think about what you'd love to get paid for. And then the last question is to think about what the world needs, or even not the bigger world, your closest people in your world, family and friends, for example. How could you contribute to those people in a more positive way? And think about that and write anything down that comes. And you should be left then with 4 questions and different answers. And then what you want to do is circle the common denominators in all 4 boxes or questions. And then that will give you some sort of a clue to actually who you are, because our purpose is derived through what our passions are and what we love, what our skills and talents are, and what legacy we want to leave behind, what impact we want to have on the world. And like I said, that the exercise that I did to help me with that was called Ikigai. But I also went and flew over to Toronto in 2019 and did a course called Pinpoint Your Purpose to really try and figure mine out. But that's a really basic idea. And the idea is to just keep working on it. Look back on your own timeline at some of your strengths as well. And it should give you clues to sort of actually who you are and why you're here.
Amazing, Matt. Thank you so much indeed for sharing your wisdom. It's been enlightening and joyful speaking with you. I could carry on speaking with you, and we probably will do after this podcast, but I just want to say thank you so much. If you're interested in what Matt has to offer, go and check out his website. Where can people find you who are new to your material, Matt?
Yeah, so you can just find me at mattcooke.me. If you just search Matt Cooke Manifestation on TikTok, you'll find me, and Matt Cooke Coach on Instagram as well. So that's mainly where I hang out.
Fantastic. And if you haven't had a chance to look at any of Matt's TikTok, go and have a look. There are some very inspiring videos there that will keep you busy for literally weeks.
Thank you, James.
Matt, thank you so much for being on the show this week. Matt Cooke is this week's Super Soul Model. Thank you so much indeed. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And please leave a review wherever you're listening to this. Matt, once again, thank you so much for being part of this experience and being part of this show. It's been wonderful speaking with you. And until the next episode, I wish you all green lights.